My name is Matthias Holder, and I'm working at E.ON Innovation in the area of mobility. And I will be today your host for the next session, Networked Mobility, an integral part of the energy system. This morning, we already spoke about the electrification of utility vehicles like trucks and buses. In the upcoming session, we would like to emphasize that a successful energy transition, and that is what we mostly take care about at E.ON, can only work with a mobility transition towards more sustainable ways of transport. Both systems, energy and mobility system, are highly interconnected and interdependent. We will explore today how the electrification of e-mobility can work without overstressing our existing electricity grids. I will, of course, not do this on my own. I've invited some great speakers for this, starting with Dr. Lioudmila Simon, who is heading the Networked Mobility team at E.ON Innovation, followed by David Balensiefen, who is the founder and managing director of GridX. Of course, it is important to get the perspective from our energy networks. For this reason, we have Dr. Armin Gaul, who is heading the product and sales channel management division at Westenergie. Westenergie is the mother company of the largest electricity network operator in Germany, Westnetz. Last but not least, Matthias Wiecher, who is leading our global e-mobility activities at E.ON. To start with, Lioudmila, you are leading E.ON's innovation activities in the area of networked mobility. To be honest, I've never heard that term. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, mobility is facing big changes caused by the need to go for the reduction of CO2 emissions. E-mobility will significantly contribute to the reduction of environmental effects, especially in cities and towns. But what is different about e-mobility? So if we think about diesel and gasoline cars, so they have a well-developed infrastructure of filling stations. Fuel is delivered by pipelines and trucks to the filling stations. In case of e-mobility, it is important to go for the implementation of charging infrastructure, which is connected to electricity grids. Therefore, the role of an electric vehicle is changing. It is not just a car for driving anymore. It is becoming a part of the energy system. Just to illustrate, 40 million electric vehicles are expected in Europe by 2030. And all these cars will need charging points, first of all at home, at work, but also at public. And to charge these cars, 100 terawatt hours green electricity will be needed to be delivered by electricity grids to the charging points. And it means there's need for adaptation at the side of electricity grids, but also at the side of our customers. We develop innovative solutions to make this transition as smooth as possible for e-mobility and for our customers.
Thanks, Lioudmila. I've understood that e-mobility is at a tipping point of a widespread adoption, and that you project an exponential growth curve. Matthias, could you please summarize E.ON's e-mobility activities and illustrate what our business model is in that?
Happy to. So thank you for giving me the chance to talk about this here. And as Lioudmila said, we are at the beginning of an exponential change in the way that we drive and transport goods. And what we as E.ON want and are providing here is to be the partner of choice for our customers in helping make this transition reality. What does that mean, partner of choice? This means that we are there to help customers find solutions to the problems that are linked to this transition and to this emerging trend that we see now happening and that is accelerating, that we are at the beginning of, though, by providing end-to-end solutions. So the hardware that's required, the installation services that are required, and the operation services that are required, geared towards and really tailored towards the needs that the customers have as they are changing the way that they drive cars. And what's important here is that what we want to provide in particular is to make the best out of the energy and the infrastructure that those customers already have, be that at home, be that at a business, or be that in a city or a quarter. And here, obviously, E.ON's heritage comes into play as the energy company in Europe, where it is expected for us, but also something that we can deliver to make the best out of this infrastructure. which is why I'm happy to have this discussion here with all individuals on the stage, as this is something that we develop and innovate around, and to make sure that we can provide these solutions to our customers.
That was a rather positive perspective on what we're doing. I like to hear that. Sorry that I have to tip in here. What are the challenges? Armin, to you. How do you see e-mobility and what still needs to happen to have this widespread adoption?
Well, to start quite simple, we need cars, which is something that's going to happen if we look at the commercials of the car manufacturers. Then we need batteries with the right size for our customers to buy those cars. And then it comes into our business, which means we need to provide green electricity to those cars, because that's the only reason why it's sensible to drive electric cars. And to provide this green energy, what we need is charging facilities at home, on premise, as well as at the roadside, so in the public area.
Understood. Nevertheless, let me ask it quite frankly. Are we prepared for this widespread adoption? Are our electricity networks ready for it?
That's well, not so easy to answer question. If you ask me whether we can provide the energy that is needed for the cars, it's a definite yes. The 100 terawatt hours that Lioudmila has just stated can be transported over our transmission grids and distribution grids to the customers that have their car. The difficulty comes in when we think of where are they going to charge? Are they going to charge at home? Are they going to charge at work? Are they going to charge on the motorway? So where do we need to deliver this energy? Why is this important? If you drive your car in the morning, you usually get stuck in a traffic jam, which means you go to a location where many people want to go at the same time. So the same thing could happen to our infrastructure to provide the cars with energy. If everybody wants to charge at the same time, we might get into difficulties. On the other hand, cars usually stand around for about 23 hours a day, so there's plenty of time to get them charged. So it's an easy one regard to energy. It might be a difficult one with regard to the power that we need to provide. And for that reason, we need some kind of control in the grid or on the premises of the customer, which means we need to announce to the market what the grid capabilities are at what time of day, or what they currently are if you directly want to charge, and then combine that with other demands, either on the grid or on the premises of the customer. For example, he's got rooftop photovoltaics, or he's got a production site running, which at certain times of the day consumes a lot of power, and at other times of the day doesn't use a lot of power. Then that is ideas where we can come in with new ideas to control whether to charge the car now or maybe 15 minutes later, and then we can get it done. So we will have answers, but there is some way to go.
When I'm listening to you, you used quite often the word control in the grid. David, you could maybe provide that kind of control. Could you please share a first glimpse of what GridX as a company is? And also, I heard that you're already working with E.ON. How does that partnership look like?
Yeah, at GridX we are providing scalable energy products and solutions for the big challenges of our times, meaning climate change, decarbonization, digitalization, and decentralization of energy markets. And we as a company, we don't do direct B2C. We provide our technology usually to big B2B businesses such as E.ON, helping them integrate our technology, our products for their product offerings. And I think maybe one solution to highlight is our Xenon Charge solution. It's an active and dynamic load management for charging infrastructure. And the goal is to make charging infrastructure as easy and cost efficient as possible. So how does it look like, and what do I mean? I just give you a short example. So imagine you are a hotel owner and you want to build up, let's say, 5 charge points or 5 charging stations with 22 kilowatts peak per charging station. And that could immediately double your grid access capacity. And then you, as a hotel owner, has 2 choices. One would be to extend your grid capacity with a transformator, but that is very costly. speaking, ranging from 50,000 to a couple of 100,000 of euros. And the other option would be just buy a dynamic load management from GridX or in the future from E.ON. And so we want to really help our customers to save money, and not only to save money with the grid expansion, but also to optimize the peak power over time, so optimizing OPEX costs for our customer sites. And at the end, what we are doing and providing is a local controller, and that's a manufacturer-independent gateway. We speak over 150 different protocols, and we are able to control and distribute energy where it's needed, not only for charging stations, but also for other assets. And at the end, our customer base, also with E.ON, ranging from DHL, Axel Springer, and other appliances. But I think how we work closely together, I think Matthias is talk a little bit more about that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hear quite often the words, we are working together with E.ON. And it seems to be a very critical area for E.ON in scaling this e-mobility activities. Matthias, why have you nevertheless decided to work with a startup, and why have you decided to collaborate with GridX on it?
I think first, before we go into this, a few words on what customer problem are we trying to solve here. I think this was mentioned a couple of times. This is that if a customer, so any corporate, is deciding to put now electric charging infrastructure into their garages for their employees or for their guests or for their own fleet, then they at one point will get to the challenge that there is a certain grid capacity that they can't overshoot for this new load that wasn't planned for an existing building. And this is, on the one hand, a challenge because it is either becoming very, very expensive or even potentially impossible to charge as many cars as you want to. And then on the other side of the meter comes Armin, who then potentially has problems also from the grid side to actually cater for all of this, these additional cars and with that the additional load. So we were looking for a way to solve this customer problem, to allow customers in a more cost-efficient way to bring more cars that are electric in their respective fleets. And the question to this was also mentioned a couple of times, is dynamic load management. So it's dynamic into both directions. It is dynamic in that it is really only giving the amount of energy to a car that's the car needs to be ready on time when it's expected to leave. And it's dynamic that it is looking at how much energy does the site, the building, use at the moment, and is using the residual to the maximum capacity that the site had. And here we've looked for a solution that would allow us to solve this problem with the right quality, with the right sort of customer experience, but also price point, and in a way that, as we decided early on that this is a capability that we don't have ourselves, instead of developing this ourselves, we indeed look to partner. And then we sort of looked at who has the best solution and who is also willing, and this is, I think, important, to partner with us and continue to co-develop on what we have now towards what we will need in a couple of years. As we are in an ecosystem that is new, that is changing continuously, and we need to be able to adopt. And I think that's very quickly we sort of reached out to David and his team, and ultimately found what we needed to find in GridX and in the team. So that indeed we are now very happy that we will provide this customer or the solution to this customer problem based on GridX technology and the GridX controller box that David mentioned earlier, which is why I'm happy that we indeed now together in a much quicker way, I think with the right customer experience, can offer this now to E.ON customers.
Great.
And perhaps one additional thing on this is just to make this, I mean, it's all potentially a bit too theoretical of what this does. So with the joint solution of E.ON and GridX, we can now charge 8 times as many cars as without this solution, everything else being equal. So this allows customers to, as I said, put in 8 times as many chargers, 8 times as many cars into an electric fleet by simply choosing this solution over the standard way of just putting more copper into the ground.
Really good. Can you already share with us when it will be available for E.ON's customers?
I think we are already talking to the first customers now. And we'll launch this within the next couple of weeks. And one of the first things that we will do is we are drinking the wine that we are preaching. So if I can sort of, but I guess that's more something for Lioudmila to elaborate on.
Right, so what we will do, we will use our headquarters in Essen for testing and piloting the dynamic load solution of GridX. The challenge we have at our headquarters is the limited grid connection capacity. So, and within this pilot, we will show that we will be not only able to stay within the existing grid connection capacity, we will even install additional charging points for our colleagues and for visitors. So it means all charging processes will be managed by the dynamic load management, considering also the energy flows of the whole site, so of the whole building headquarters. Also, in the next step, photovoltaic and CHP we have at the site. And so we will ensure the maximum energy to be available for the charging processes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great project because we at GridX really believe in independent and open systems, and to have a site where we have a lot of charge points, but also solar panels, and in the future maybe other assets. I think it's a really great pilot, but also I think it's really nice to see that you have a pilot running on your side, not selling a product you don't use. So I think first-hand experience is the best.
Cool. I like that we walk the talk here as E.ON. That is very good. Before we go on, I want to mention to the audience, please raise your questions. Post them in the chat function. We are very eager to answer them and looking forward to receiving them. Next topic. I hear the term bidirectional charging very often. Nevertheless, only a few EVs and a few charging stations are capable of supporting this technology. Before we start here, Matthias, are we already working at E.ON in the direction of bidirectional charging? And can you share maybe a concrete example on it?
Sure, happy to. So bidirectional charging means that, as I think Professor Sauer mentioned in the session that was just earlier than 2 hours, means that I use the battery of the car as a storage also for other uses. And indeed, there is at the moment only one standard that can do this, so one charging standard, but there is sort of innovation and development work going on to also make this sort of more standard across all electric vehicles that will be released into the market, so that at this moment we are still talking about an innovation, right? Which however can sort of take a significant role in making EVs integrated better into the system that Armin mentioned earlier, as I'm adding flexibility and control into the entire system. So what we are working on different projects and in different degrees of implementation. So I think bidirectional charging starts with vehicle to home and vehicle to building, which basically means that I'm using the power stored in the battery of the car to power my home or my building, which is one set of applications that we are testing to optimize energy consumptions, save money by reducing peak loads and challenges like this. And then sort of the next step, which is also the most complicated, but also the one that potentially has the highest earnings and savings potential, is called vehicle to grid, which means that I'm using the battery with the bidirectional charging capability to provide grid services to the TSO and DSO. By offering primary reserve flexibility and products. And here we have a project jointly with Nissan and Innovate UK in the UK, in which we are deploying those chargers and those cars with these partners and have combined those within our E.ON trading systems to indeed start to market this flexibility that comes out of those cars. Which is one of the most advanced projects when it comes to testing the commercialization of this technology.
Cool. Armin, it seems a dream comes true for a guy from Energy Networks, that you can now use small-scale assets like EV batteries for managing flexibility on it. Do you believe that flexibility marketing is or will become a profitable business for E.ON in the future?
Actually, it needs to, because we're going to an immense change of our energy networks right now. We're trying to get our energy networks CO2 free, which means we will be powered from renewable energies. that cuts off from having storages. Our storages in the past have been gas, oil, coal, lignite. Those we could burn whenever we needed energy. Now we are going to be dependent on wind and sunlight. That means it's not always available. There is enough available, but not every time of the day. So we cannot just do whatever we want at any time that we want it. So our system will need storage. Storage has to be paid for.
Yeah.
Now, if there's fleets of millions of electric cars around, which for the customer needs to go on vacation once or twice a year, have batteries which are far bigger than needed for the everyday commuting from your home to your job and back. That means there's a lot of storage available on the grid that could be used for sensible things like combining the production and the demand of all the other customers. So this flexibility, I think, will open up a new market which will be available to all of our customers. And as E.ON, we will be one of the companies paving the way to get this market in place. So we are working on projects where we can show to market players what kind of energy demand there is on the grid, what flexibility there will be on the grid in the next hours. They can get prognosis from the photovoltaics and from the wind energy farms saying we will have energy available, and then there arises a chance for new market players or for ourselves to do something with this information and to get those things combined. What it needs is the cars need to react to some kind of signals when they are charging, at least. That is what most cars can do at the moment, and which will be the first step into this flexibility market.
Yep.
And later on, there will come up ideas which also have feedback from the car into the energy grid, which has a lot of trouble when you are allowed to do this, what will the grid operator to do to it. But it will open up chances which we today cannot even imagine. But they will be there, and it will be the change we're going through in the next years.
From a market perspective, this seems to be the way to go. Fully agreed. Lioudmila, I'm quite sure that in your innovation pipeline, you look into that topic as well. Am I right?
Right, so you're fully right. So just to give you an example, we have a joint innovation project with the logistics company Fiege. Fiege decided to go for a stepwise electrification of their fleet. So, and in a joint project at the headquarters of Fiege, we show how to implement charging infrastructure using a modular approach. It means combining charging infrastructure, dynamic load management, but also the next step, photovoltaic and battery. Within this project, we show also the advantages of bidirectional charging. So it means how to use the capacity of the batteries to smooth and balance peaks of the energy consumption at the site, and so to save costs. So, and the second example called Flex EV. In some cases, charging infrastructure is combined with batteries, like mobile chargers or charging parks. So it is done to reduce the grid connection capacity or to smooth peaks in energy consumption. So, and what we are doing, we will market the flexibility of the batteries, which we don't need for the charging process, on the flexibility market. Our intelligent algorithm will automatically calculate and nominate the capacity day ahead for the flexibility market. And so we generate additional revenues for the operators of charging infrastructure, but also for our customers. And we support also the energy transition, offering also small decentral assets on the flexibility market.
Very good. GridX, any point from your side on the new way of bidirectional charging, vehicle to grid? Are you already looking into that technology from your side?
Yes, absolutely. We're looking into this kind of technology and products, but I think e-mobility will be the biggest game changer for the energy transition. And I'm pretty sure, and I believe that how energy will be consumed and will be branded will be completely different. So we maybe will move from kilowatt hours more to kilometer range. And the question is how we can provide our customers the best customer journey. And I think to be really have a touchable, I would say, argument, it needs to be in I would say in euros, economical scene. So we want to do, or we want to provide the cheapest mobility as possible, meaning vehicle to grid, vehicle to home will be necessary to do it. So we are looking into different value pools to deliver our customers the cheapest way to go from A to B. And I think V2G, V2H, and V2X and all the buzzwords, I think will be very important. Therefore we have integrations already into VPPs, but nobody knows how the whole future will behave. But we want to be sure that our technology is capable of providing such business models.
Great. I think you mentioned in the end of your statement one important thing. It is about technology, but it is mostly also about ease of use to have this widespread adoption, what we talked in the beginning. I think you built a great bridge on looking into what our users, what our audience is saying. Let me take the question from Xavier Moreau. How to optimize charging in multi-tenant buildings if every single parking slot has its own meter, own supplier? You've raised already your mic, Armin. I was expecting you to take that question.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's pretty much into the solution that we've been talking in our first talks with GridX, when we said there is the opportunity that you have a parking lot which is used for many cars living in flats which are around or above that parking lot. And obviously that house has one grid connection and not 25 or 50 grid connections. So we get in the situation that even if there are some people willing to charge their cars, there needs to be a solution for the building and not for the single customer. And together with GridX, we are in a solution that exactly provides this. And the great thing is, it's the right starting point. That is something that our customers today have as a challenge. Customers are not integrated into the energy market, maybe in the spot market, but today they have the challenge, how do I get 25 chargers in the cellar of a house with several people living in it? And that is a provision which we can guarantee today with GridX. We have a solution for that. They can charge all. And as already mentioned by Matthias, we can put about 8 more chargers in that building than that would be available with just having the single grid connection.
Yeah, and at the end, that's 8 more users to be connected to e-mobility, which is a great signal.
Perhaps, Matthias, if I'm just happy. I don't want to put water in the wine now, but I'm going to do this now anyway, right? We're talking innovation, and I think all of this is technology innovation, but we also have to keep in mind that all of the things that we're talking about are still projects, right? So I think from where we are now to this is becoming standard in infrastructure, standard in the industry, there is still a wide way to go, in particular because we are entering new territory here. So there is no precedent from a regulatory perspective, from a grid management perspective, from a customer perspective to say, I'm going to follow this blueprint and then I'm going to be fine. So we are entering a new territory here, which is why I think we need to continuously innovate and work on this and take along the regulatory bodies and legislation bodies, as this is a new way of integrating and also interfering potentially with something that's happening behind the meter in a building or in a business. So that all of this is on the right path to really allow optimizing EVs in the system to maximize energy, the use of renewable energies and so forth. But the technology we've proven now, but the next steps will be to make sure that there is sort of an ability to use this in the marketplace. There's regulatory environments that allow this to happen and so forth. So there's still innovation around this, which is not as sexy as a new hardware, but still requires a lot of innovation.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would like to take the next question, addressing it to you, David. When will solutions like GridX be necessary for consumers? I think that would be now great to interact with the person raising the question. Does he mean in terms of time? Does he mean in terms of size and monetary aspects? Maybe you try to flag them all.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that we just not only provide the dynamic load management solutions, but also providing holistic energy management function for consumers already. So the question is, what is he meaning? But I assume it's about smart charging and dynamic load management. Yeah, I think it depends on the country. There are countries in Europe where a load management is already kind of required because they have not such a big grid capacity at their homes as in Germany. But I'm sure, because I know people that are driving 2 Teslas or 2 Renault Zoes, and they have the problem they can't install 2 charging stations with 22 kilowatts at their home. And I think in the future we will see more of these kind of consumers in the market.
Yeah,
I tend to agree. So I don't know whether the question was geared towards regulatory requirements. There's indeed some countries that already have those in place, but so I think the direct answer would be that for many customers, this is already required now. Because they will not be able to install the chargers that they need to drive the electric cars that they want. Right? And now this is also not a luxury problem of the few individuals that have 2 Teslas, right? But this is something that every sort of existing multi-tenant building is usually overwhelmed with all of those tenants wanting to drive an electric car.
But yeah, okay. But the question I guess was for consumers. But if it's customers, then it's right. Yeah.
probably what you said highlights it by our necessity to install the GridX solution at our headquarters in Essen. I have to come to the end, but wanted to raise the last question. Flexibility markets. What is your wider vision combining digital ledgers, smart grids, batteries, and consumers? Lioudmila, do you want to take that one?
So from my perspective, it is not the question anymore if flexibility will come or not, if it is needed. It is, from my perspective, to enable the energy transition, it is a must. So it means all energy players need to be able to provide flexibility to the grids, but also to the market. So it means it will be also a feature, a must feature also for the cars in future, to be flexible and to be manageable by such solutions like GridX or by the cars.
Perfect. Last question, I'll take this one, very last one. Will regulation help or slow the coming changes? Matthias, how do you see the regulatory landscape at the moment?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer in the time that is left. I mean, generally speaking, we are, as I said earlier, we are treading new territory, and which is why I think intelligent regulation is going to help. And we are also still, e-mobility is still in a situation where we need to place incentives to change to electric vehicles, which is why I think it is required, and it's also so good that there are sort of steering impulses from regulatory and legislative bodies to do this. At the same time, I think our belief is that if we want this to turn into a market, we need to also let the market decide, right? And sort of build the required boundaries, but ultimately leave the market players to define what's the best solution for the customers, which ultimately then is going to drive what we want, which is EV adoption using of electric vehicles, and with this a more carbon neutral electrification transportation.
Yeah. I can probably add that all of us 5 have been relieved that there was no premium on combustion engine cars in terms of regulation, so that was a happy day for us, and is important, or tells that we are excited to see e-mobility thriving, as we have spoken today about it. With this, I wanted to conclude the session. First of all, thanks to our panelists today. Great that you have made the way to our fantastic studio. And of course, to the audience participating with your questions, that was very enriching. To quickly summarize, we have learned that e-mobility is not a sub-area of the future energy world. To me, and I think to some of the others, it sits directly at its core. And I'll take away from Armin as a last statement that our electricity networks are prepared for the significant increase of EVs, but it is necessary to implement intelligent energy management solutions. With this, thanks for the session.